Now the ARO is an annual metric. So if we think it's going to take place one time in a year, the ARO is 1.0. If we think it's going to take place once in 10 years, then it's 0.1, etc. So the ARO is the frequency. It's based on annual, 12 months. If we think it's going to take place 3 times in a year, what would that be? The ARO would be 3. So now we need to put all this together. The single loss expectancy, again, and I'm going to repeat this because I've taught it a lot, and I know that people miss what we're actually doing. Unfortunately, what a lot of people do is they memorize this for the exam. They don't understand how it really works in the real world. They get their CISSP, but they don't know how to use this information. So SLE means that we have one asset, and we think that if something bad happens, let's say a tornado, this percentage of that asset would be affected. That's the SLE. Now we need to look at, well, what's the probability? How often do we think that this is going to take place? That's where the ARO comes in place. So we take that single loss expectancy and we multiply it times the ARO. So what that says is this one asset, if this specific threat comes to be realized and it happens once in a year, we're going to come up with a value. And that's the ALE, the annual loss expectancy. Now, the ALE, what are we going to do with this information? We've gone through these exercises, we've done our mathematics, and this ALE, what does that represent? This is the potential loss that a company can go through if a threat becomes realized. The ALE is the potential loss. Now, I'm going to step outside of CISSP just real quick. Usually you don't do individual assets. You have groups of assets. You'll do all the servers or all the applications or whatever. You don't do every single asset within the company this way. That's outside of CISSP. For CISSP, you do need to know these formulas. I also hope you know what they mean, because you're not going to just see it on CISSP. These are used all over the place. You can find them a lot of information, a lot of resources, and because information security is really leaning towards risk management because it's so important, you need to know this information. So we said that the ALE is the potential loss that a company can endure. So what do we do with that? Well, this is how we determine what risks we attack first. Remember I said that there's so many risks that a company is going to have to deal with, but they can't deal with them all at the same time. The ALE value is going to help categorize these risks. It's going to help determine the budget that's needed for the security program overall. It's going to tell us, it's a roadmap. This is what we have to do first. This is the potential loss we can go through. This is the potential, or this is the budget that we actually need. That's why we do the ALE. It's not a specific value. So, and what I mean by that is, it's not going to be like you're absolutely going to lose this specific amount of information. It's a guesstimation, because you're looking into the future. So this is potentially how much we can lose. So again, remember I said the definitions between the different concepts within security are important. You have to identify the vulnerabilities. You identify if they have any threats that can exploit them. You calculate the risks, either based on qualitative or quantitative, and that lets you categorize the risk based on importance, on what you need to put money towards first. So let's go through a quick calculation. If we have an e-commerce site and we have a value of $300,000 and we think that there's going to be 40% damage, let's say if somebody hacked in, or a virus or something. So we'll just say hacker because that's what most people are interested in. So we have our e-commerce sites worth $300,000, and we estimate that if this exploit happens, that it's going to cause 40% damage. So the first thing we have to calculate is the SLE. So it's $300,000 multiplied by the exposure factor. So that would be 0.4 because it's 40%. The SLE is $120,000. That's for one time. If it happens one time, we could potentially lose that much amount of money, or that's how much we have to spend to recover. But of course, threats can happen more than once, so we have to figure out the probability. That's where the ARO comes in. We have the SLE, we multiply it times the ARO, which is how often we think it's going to take place. And if we think it's going to take place once, then it's 1.0, and our ALE is $120,000. So what this means is, for this specific vulnerability, we're not going to spend over $120,000 to protect against it. We're not going to spend $300,000 because we don't even have that potential loss. Again, that's how it helps us set our budget for the type of controls that we need to put in place. So you walk through an example yourself. If we have a facility that's worth $650,000, and if a tornado comes through, we think once in 10 years, and there would be 35% damage, what would the ALE be? So to calculate the SLE, because you can't go directly to the ALE, you first have to calculate the SLE because it feeds into the ALE formula. So our asset, the facility, is $650,000. We multiplied times the exposure factor, which is a percentage. We think 35% damage is going to take place. So we come up with the $202,700. Now, we think that's going to happen once in 10 years. Would that be 1.0? No, 1.0 is once in 12 months. So we multiply our SLE times the ARO, and we get the ALE. So what this means is we're not going to spend over this amount of money to protect this facility from a tornado.